can. No, they can. Is your mic on? Sean, is your mic on? I would say his mic's not on. Tell him when it's not.
I think it's working. Can you guys hear me online okay?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I am going to go ahead and call this Friday, August 20th meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. We do have Supervisor Turk and Supervisor Luck online, and then we have Supervisor Seat, Brewer, and myself here, so we do have a quorum. We can conduct our business. First, I wanted to say thank you for, I know our Vice Chair is not here today, but I really appreciate him running the meetings for the past two Finance and Personnel Committee meetings since I had an illness and then I was out of town visiting family. So I really appreciate him stepping in and doing that. Agenda item number 2, proof of notification. Mr. Langrek, was there proper proof of notification?
We were posted, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 3, agenda approval. Today we have a 19-point agenda, so I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Motion by Brewer,
I'll second.
second by Luck. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. We have an agenda approved. Agenda item number 4, previous meeting minutes. And so this would be for our meeting in early August. I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Oh gosh, everybody. I don't even know. We'll say motion by Luck, second by Brewer. I think you were 2 of the 4 who spoke up. Any comments on those minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. We have meeting minutes approved.
Mr. Chair, we did have, just to clarify, we had 2 sets of minutes in. There was one from the previous regular meeting, and then we had the abbreviated one right before the county board, the August 17th.
Oh, I apologize. I totally forgot about that. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the August 17th minutes as well?
I'll move.
Motion by Brewer,
I'll second.
second by Turk. All those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, those minutes are also approved. Thank you, Mr. Langer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Agenda item number.
Sean, I need you.
Okay, we're gonna get Don's taken care of. Okay, I'm gonna try speaking again. No, we're still echoing. Okay, Mr. Seep has left the virtual meeting. Back to just in person. Agenda item number 5, approval of Buffalo NAS computer server purchase with borrowed funds. Mr. Langer.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a resolution to approve purchase of a new Buffalo NAS computer server system, network access storage with money from Fund 75 capital improvements. Background on this item is in late July, early August, the Buffalo NAS, the system died. This device contained all of our wearable and squad video storage since we started recording. We did not have a redundant system, therefore we were waiting on data recovery to hopefully recover the lost videos. The attached invoice is to replace the old Buffalo with a redundant system, so we hopefully are never in the same situation. The items have been purchased with emergency authorization from the county administrator. We have funds slated from Fund 75 for computer system upgrades that we will be appropriating and utilizing for this purchase. I would defer to Director Barb Scott and Sheriff Porter for additional information on this item, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're looking for a motion to approve this purchase.
I move for approval of the purchase.
Motion by Seep,
Second.
second by Brewer. Are there any questions or discussion?
Does this require county board approval?
The purchase will be over $10,000, so underneath the emergency authorization and the need of it, authorization was given by myself, and now I'm looking for confirmation from the county board so that it does come out of county coffers and not on Langrick's checkbook.
It's also out of borrowed funds.
Yes.
So are you asking that this be forwarded to the county board for?
Yes, I think the entire purchase is $15,000 because this is a redundant system with,
So, in fact, that's the essence of my motion.
I've got the invoice right here, for the NAS quote. You can help me interpret it. Here's Scott, 1 second here, and it should be viewable on your screen.
So I think Mr. Seep's question was will this be forwarded to the full county board? What's the answer to that?
Yes, underneath our purchasing policy, I think things in excess of 10,000 still go to county board for approval.
Okay. So the motion is just to approve this, and then it's assumed it will go to county board.
Utilizing Fund 75, which falls into your folks' lap.
Okay. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. All right, that motion carries. On to, lost my agenda, but I know it's number 6. Financial reports, Treasurer's Office. Treasurer Keller, you're up.
We'll rotate this for you, Treasurer Keller. We've got it shared in just a minute here. There you are, Madam Treasurer.
Okay, the cash history, we can see that looks like we've got all kinds of money in July. We also did spend out quite a bit in August.
Could you speak up a little, Treasurer Keller?
Okay. As I said, we have a good balance for the end of July, but we did spend out quite a bit of money in August, but it's still looking good. We had a good tax collection. Are there any questions on the cash history?
I don't have a question, but I just want to share with the committee that I did have a conversation yesterday with Treasurer Keller, and we talked about what specifically is in the cash balance history, because that has come up before as a question. And I believe that probably in September, we'll have a list of potentially a list of things that are in cash balance history, because as she started explaining things to me, it does quickly get complicated. And since she's the expert on this, and unfortunately, since she's going to be leaving us soon, I thought it was the right time to ask that question. So I just want to let the committee know that you can look forward to that in September.
I do have a few things now, that I got together quickly.
Sure, if you want to do that, that'd be great. Since you did some work already, that'd be great.
Okay. I have, well, these are two things that are not in the cash balance, which is always confusing. The capital projects, Fund 75, which we just spoke about with Barb's project, that is not in the cash balance. That is in a separate account in the investment pool. I did print out some reports on that. The balance is little over 1.3 million. So that's what's left in there as of today. And we also have the new capital improvements for 2021. That is not in our cash balance. That is in a separate account at the pool. And we now have a little over 936,000 in that. So those two items are not in the pool. I know we get asked that quite often, if all of that is included in that.
Ms. Keller, are those two separate line items?
Yes, they are. The 2021 is Fund 92, and then the Fund 75, the other capital projects, that is from last year. And I know we have a deadline of when that has to get spent at the end of 2022, or if I don't remember the deadline, but
Fund 73, I believe it's the end of 2020. That's in May, I think. May 2023 is I'd have to back reference it, but that's what's coming to the top of my head.
I know
Which fund has the deadline, the latest deadline?
Fund 75, and that was
And that is when?
believe
Yes,
it's
I don't
May,
remember for sure.
I think it was May 2023 because it was a 3-year plan to spend it out. I think we did the appropriations and
And what's the story on the new cash balance?
That one I didn't hear of a deadline, if that's to be spent yet this year, or
new one I'd have to check. I think it's multiple years we
Yeah.
have to spend it out.
I'm not aware of the deadline on that one.
Thank you.
That's the new one. And then I did talk to the clerk's office, and Clerk Kalish did run just a couple of quick reports. The part of what is in the cash balance is the Pine Valley cash account, which as of today or this morning, that amount was little over 4.5 million. So that belongs to Pine Valley, and that is in that cash balance. And then we also have the highway fund. That's their cash account, and there's a little over 4.2 million. So in case anyone is wondering where some of those big amounts come from, those two departments, have cash accounts that large. So in a sense, if they decided they had to spend all of that, cash account would be much lower.
And then one other thing that I learned, I think a couple of months ago from you, was that because we levied additional dollars for debt, last year we made that decision to do that. For this year, that money is also included in the cash balance because that was income from property taxes.
That's correct.
So in a sense, we have raised money in the cash balance history for those two funds, for borrowed monies, Fund 75 and Fund 92. So when our cash balance history is going up, that was a learning thing for me to realize that that's because we're taxing people additionally. And so we are seeing that.
Right, and the tax money is in that cash balance, correct?
Okay, any
that-
questions or?
Not that that is a bad thing. It's a necessary thing.
Right. I wasn't implying that, but I was just making it clear that I think the question is, why is our cash balance history going up? And I've been interested in that.
Yes.
And I think there are probably many factors that lead to it, but that's probably one of the factors.
May I ask another question, Mr. Chair?
Why don't you ask one more question? Let's see if anyone else has any. So go ahead.
Do you have the general fund balance?
That's not what she's presenting today. She's
I
presenting
know,
cash
just wondered
balances.
if she had it.
Oh, I don't have it.
All right,
Are you
thank
talking about the ones the auditors come up with?
Thank you.
Yes, I think that's what he's referring to. Okay, does anyone else who hasn't spoken up have any questions or comments on the cash balance history? Okay, then you can go on.
Okay.
Next ones.
Okay, the sales tax history, that's staying pretty good. I believe if we can stay over 100,000, that we're doing pretty well. It did go down from last month, but you can see it kind of goes up and down throughout the months. I think we know the story on the interest on investments, that I don't think that's going to change for a while. It's very low interest. And then our delinquent tax history, we had a very good year. You can see that the percentage of delinquency from the entire tax roll now at the end of the July collections is 2.34%. And if you look at the history, that's a very low number. It's very good.
Any more questions for Treasurer Keller? Thank you so much for keeping us regularly updated. We'll look forward to September and maybe October, 2 more months from you.
See.
Okay. All right. This takes us to agenda item number 7, approval of appropriations of capital funds for fairgrounds improvements. Mr. Langer.
Mr. Chair, looking today for motion to change or apportion the Fairgrounds number 75 project of $80,000 from the title of track lighting to pay for the following work projects. There's several there that you'll see. There's city utilities, $3,050, moving additional power lines underground with light pole placement. I believe this is in the parking camping area. Richland Electric Cooperative of $854.80, the cost of the light poles that the city utilities will place. Wallace Electric of $4,500, and then of $4,061.77. This is utility repairs and upgrades to the lights, the panel boxes, and the breakers. We are also asking that the lighting and utility work that had to be done during the rodeo, the safety and the lighting issues, be supported by these same funds and replenish the payments made out for Fund 68, which they maneuvered with, in the amount of $2,060 for Wallace Electric. Background, the Fairgrounds Committee originally submitted a project of light replacement in the track area for Capital Borrowing Project 75. Given the grounds weren't used in 2020 due to the COVID-19, the issues that came from the light are now in 2021 were the situations that put the county and risk for injury. Several projects were done during the week of the rodeo, others before the scheduled event in July, with the remaining sensor issue that will be addressed as parts arrive, with hopes of completing it before the fair. The remaining work is not high-risk situation, but the electrician must be hired for it. There will be additional bills submitted for that work. Scott Gold, co-chair, moved to approve time-sensitive projects and utilize a portion of the borrowed funds for the Fairgrounds track lighting to be used for those projects listed above in the Fairground Committee meeting on June 16th, 2021, seconded by Jamie. We say Coach? How do we do it here? Coke. Okay, so this one's Coke. Okay, thank you. Motion carried. This was agenda item number 10 on their meeting. So invoices are included. Again, we have the appropriation amount of that pie in $80,000, looking to apportion part of that pie then, rather than doing the entire, as it was intended, light project on the infield, portion it for these other electrical and light initiatives throughout the campus, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to change a portion of the project that was just for track lighting before to pay for these 4 bullet items below.
I'll move.
Motion by Brewer,
I'll second the motion.
second by Seat. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those say no. That motion carries. To agenda item. So sorry, I keep losing my agenda, slowing us down. Agenda item number 8, fund deficiencies and surpluses for 2020. Mr. Langright.
Mr. Chair, we do not have it completed for this meeting. Recommend that we re-agenda it for September 7th. We did have our auditors come in Wednesday and Thursday for their field and site visit. So they are complete with the site visit. They're anticipating on doing a little bit of cleanup work with HHS, I believe maybe 1 or 2 of the other departments, and we'll hopefully have our audit then to us within the next few weeks, where we'll be able to then have the firm numbers on deficiency and surpluses. Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll look forward to taking that up in September then. Agenda item number 9, a presentation of the preliminary 2022 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking today for a motion to accept and file preliminary budget, continue efforts to develop options with departments, and to have the administrator present a recommendation on September 7th is the action that I'll be asking for. A lot of ground to cover on here. At the same time, though, keep in mind is a little bit of expectation management. This is a continued project, and that we are continuing to develop more firmer numbers. The main point and objective of today is to get you familiar again with the documents that have been presented, that are going into building the preliminary budget. The action of accepting today doesn't solidify any monies. What the action of accepting today is really just understanding that we all agree that these are the base documents that we're going to be working from as we make necessary adjustments to close the gap and to present a balanced budget. I'm sorry, do you have something?
I was going to offer a motion to accept, but I don't know that you were.
Whenever you want.
Let's just go ahead and let him give the report, and then we can.
I thought he was through.
The August 20 preliminary budget. So the summary on the budget, let me pull up the documents here as well as then trying to educate you on where you're going to be able to find them through your committee folder. So if you go to today's meeting on your iPads, I hope everybody's got their iPads. I'm going to try to pull it up. It's not going to look the same, so maybe let me just talk you through it. If you go to your iPads and you go to the 2021s, you go to our Finance and Personnel Committee meeting, and you go to August 20th, you'll see a folder there within the committee meeting folder that has preliminary budgets written on it. I'll give everybody just a minute if we can get confirmation that everybody is there. I'm not losing anybody.
Just let us know when you can see that folder.
It's a PDF folder, right?
Yes, it's going to be through your PDF viewer. You'll see underneath today's meeting a separate subfolder that says preliminary budgets.
I got it.
Coming up. It's
Got
not-
it.
I saw it yesterday, but it's not coming up for me now.
No, it's under.
No.
Yeah, it's under finance for today's meeting, August 20th. And then there's a folder within that folder. It says preliminary budgets.
Thank you.
Let's just check that. Supervisor Brewer, do you have that?
Okay,
This takes a minimum of mechanical skill.
a little. We're making great strides here on the across the digital divide into a whole new cyber world of budgeting. Okay. In this folder, you're going to see a series of many different PDFs. The first three that I think are populated on most people's devices, or should be if it's an alphabetical sort by, is going to be three documents that start with Budget 2022. The first one is the County Budget Summary. The second one is, you'll see 2022 Levy by Departments. Then you'll see 2022 Levy Distribution. Then you will see 2022 levy distribution. Then you're going to see a series that all begin with the word summary, and then you'll see department names or different functions. The first three are reports that we'll go through, and they are summarized reports collected out of the information that was put into the AS400 system, and then spit back out, and then we put them into an Excel type of a format to try to balance in these three different ways to see if they're lining up. The following ones that all begin with summary are the narratives that were submitted back by departments explaining how the budget impacts them, with the guidance given, the maneuvers that they were able to try to do to remedy it, and then any types of proposals to restore services or expand services. And looking at the budget summary document, I'll give everybody a minute to open up that one. You should be looking at a document that's broken down into columns out to J and lines that go down about to a line 43. This is a
Mr. Can I ask a question quick? I just want to know if there's a way to rotate it on my iPad. It's sideways on my iPad.
Hold on.
It's consistent though. Everybody's showing me their iPads, so they're all sideways.
Yeah, and it's a little hard to, because if you rotate your iPad, it just rotates again.
Yeah, we'd have to put on, well, rather than trying to lock everything, we will do the workaround at the moment is I'm going to share it on your screen.
Mr. Langberg?
Supervisor Seep, go ahead.
Yes, the budget summary document is the first item on the list, right? And that's supposed to open up?
Yes, it should open up under your PDF viewer. It should look like this when turned at the right landscape view.
No matter. Oops. Thank you for your help.
Okay, so Ms. Scott just told us if we refresh, perhaps, if we resync our folders, we can get it to rotate. Is that right? Okay, she's in the process of figuring it out. So we'll let Mr. Langert go ahead, and then we might get instructions in the middle.
Mr. Chairman, I'm able to lay the computer flat and turn it, and then I can see it.
It doesn't on this. Try it on this.
Okay, Mr. Langert, go ahead.
Okay, I apologize for working through our technical spots here, but if you look at your screen, hopefully, or on the board here for folks that are in person, this is a breakdown of the budget in an Excel spreadsheet. This captures it into the areas of governmental service, which is kind of outlined by state statute on what a municipal budget should cover. It has on here all the actual expenses from 2020 as projected and estimated through the system. It does not account for any necessary journal entries or postings that are going to have to take as a result of the audit. It has actual expenses through 6/30/2021, actual and estimated through 2021, and it has our current budget and then the recommended budget for, again, our different functions there. We trace that down, you get to line 28 that shows the actual proposed budget, which is the expenditures that are anticipated out of that impacting the levy. That number is carried down into line 36 for an equalized value rate. But then out of that number, we take out bridge aid, libraries, and debt service, which leads down to line 40, the proposed levy. This is how much money right now that, with all of our preliminary budgets that have come back, with the guidance that we've issued out for overtures, mostly in the realm of increase in our placement funds and several other positions added. That's where our number arrives at. Now, our allowable levy that we're calculating, or we're again estimating based on our net new construction for improvements, our proposed levy is $7,021,000. Our allowable levy that we're tracking for possibility, again, with net new increases against the levy, is $6,556,000. So right now we're tracking an estimated $464,215.73 of gap. Getting too far ahead for you, Don?
See that, but I can't.
Okay. So the bottom line on this one, right now with our preliminary guidance, is we're looking at a gap of $464,215.73. This doesn't include, though, some of the different maneuverabilities we could potentially use to fill this, which we will get into. Back out here now.
Mr. Langert, can I ask?
Yeah.
Did all of the department budgets submitted follow the 0%?
No, there's
Increase?
some that we'd given guidance, and example of ones that we were utilizing extensive grant monies. The grants went away, or we said to start waning down on those. They came in over. There's a couple yet that we have to sort out, flush out on why some of the sheets, it shows that there's an overage, and trying to identify those. Examples too of land conservation, and last year we made a decision at the end to reincorporate a land tech position. We failed to find a new location for them, so we had rent associated with there. And for them to reach 0, I said, this was a mistake on our end, so it pulled them to keep a 0% increase based on the fact that they were authorized a position but not funded that position within their internal budget. So there are examples like that. Other ones like our placement funds. I gave guidance to Director Thorson to increase those to a more historical type of a level, which was over a $400,000 influx to try to project a more historic expenditure on those funds.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Sure.
Mr. Langberg,
Supervisor Seep.
and getting back on the wagon here, take me to the line that shows the gap again.
Yes, sir. You're looking at line 42, following down in column F.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Now, at the bottom of that document as well, it'll walk you through summaries again of expenditures and of different revenues. The bottom page on that shows the debt schedule that we're tracking as well. That doesn't have, that's kind of just a historical type of bit here. It's not directly rated into the formulas that are impacting the budgets, but it's placed at the bottom of this document. You'll find that on page 13 of the PDF. As we go along here, you can certainly ask me questions on where to find things, and I can answer the best I can. Discrepancies and things that come up, I will say that we have not sorted out and sifted through all the many different line items that have went into this yet. That's something that we hope to still accomplish through the discussions next week, through the open meeting on the 24th, through the initial presentation. We still have many numbers that are coming in that have to get added into this. So again, this is to set a preliminary to start talking on discussions and planning on anticipated gaps and how we're going to maneuver to fill them.
Mr. Chairman, isn't it true, Mr. Langrick, that because of our not inability, but our stubbornness, I would say, and not budgeting adequately for institutional placements, that figure, that nut, just remains with us year after year after year? And it is my opinion that the majority of that $400,000 is probably going to be taken up by our under budgeting of placements. I know everything else is figured in there and you've got a lot of things coming in, but that nut is still with us and it remains with us until we adequately budget.
Do you want me to respond to that? Yeah, I just wanted to, historically, we've under budgeted on those two funds, the placements of the adult and child. I think that we've kind of covered that though with the mindset that we'll have overages and operational expenses, and at the end of the year we'll wash and balance it. And it has worked for us. As you can see, we've been able to maintain operations, but this is as we try to essentially kind of get more appropriate on our operational expenses, like we had last year with the reduction of HHS budget. They don't have then that extra potential operating expenditures that they're not going to use then to displace into the placement fund. So if we're going to tell departments that they have to get right down to the bone on operations, then we can't expect to have those overages to cover placements that we're not matching our historic trends on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, Mr. C.
I certainly agree with Mr. Brewer's comments. I recall back over the years, we were only budgeting about 250,000. Then it went to 350. Eventually, we went to $1 million, I believe, $1,000,001. But those deficits accumulated over the years in budgeting, and until more recently, with the good management of the director, had those savings in other operational areas that did not exist before. But the nature of the beast is such that it is such an unpredictable and uncontrollable sort of trend in expenses. You never know what's going to come up, and it's difficult to count on a savings in operational expenses because of that. But they've done a very good job there. But Mr. Brewer is absolutely correct. We made a serious mistake by not properly budgeting for institutional costs over the years, and it's on us.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Luck.
I have a question for Mr. Langrick. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the $464,000 gap that we have right now, that is all of the departments submitting their budgets with the 0% increase. So for example, I know that law enforcement or the sheriff's department has submitted 2 versions. One version has 3 positions cut, and I think it's going to go over their budget by 160,000 or something. And then they did another one where it was the 3 positions cut was only going to go over by 20,000 or something. And another proposal was just 1 position cut, which was going to go over 160,000. So I just want to understand. So this gap is there, even though departments have submitted worst case scenarios where they're cutting multiple positions, correct?
Correct. And again, to go so far that every department is underneath a 0 levy is not true. There's departments that are over on that. So I would say this is the preliminary budgets that we have received. There is still work to do on where they're going to line up at. The specifics to the sheriff's department, this is the gap with their one that's plugged in at 0.6 or 7 or wherever arrived at a
Right.
$20,000 overage.
So essentially, worst case scenario with cutting a bunch of positions, we still have a $464,000 gap.
Mr. Chair.
Let's, Supervisor Luck has the floor, so Supervisor C, please wait.
The situation right now is this is $460,000 gap with the preliminary budgets that are in. What is not all put into this is the different supplemental funds that could potentially go into it of spend down on contingency fund, displacement from Pine Valley debt service fund, potential general undesignated general fund spend down. There is potential for ARP funds. We are waiting yet for our net new construction to know what the net levy is. Small maneuverabilities with anticipating on interest, which probably is not a whole lot there. Sales tax is a revenue. So there's other maneuverabilities to it. This also does not include some unfortunate news we're getting back on what our health insurance renewal is going to come at, which is going to be another bit of money that we're going to have to incorporate that's actually going to expand our cap. So there are things that decision points that are going to make this number go bigger and smaller in our efforts to try to get it to 0.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a couple things I just want to say. First, I just want to thank you and the rest of the staff who are working on this, your finance staff and all the department heads. I have never seen, even last year, I think we felt like we were making improvements over the year previous, but I have never seen this laid out. I think in the past, sometimes it came in late October when we actually saw these summary charts. And now we're 2 months ahead of that. And this really, I think, is it allows, I have not read through all this yet, but it now gives me and gives other people on the committee and the county board and hopefully the public, if we can get this put online, time to review and digest this. And I just am so appreciative. I think you've done a really good job of pulling everything together. Things are just so much more organized this year. And I don't know where we'd be budget-wise with it. We'd probably be back in the same place.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you for the kind words. It's certainly an effort across the entire county from department heads communicating back and forth with finance staff to MIS, who's helping us organize it in a digital format, to all of our partners as well outside of that are helping us put together the different projections. So it is a county-wide effort, but thank you.
And then I just wanted to say too that it is possible. I just wanted to let Supervisor Luck and anyone else know if you're trying to rotate pages. Ms. Scott just came up, and on your iPads, if you go to the upper left-hand corner, there are 4 squares next to each other in a sort of like a 4-leaf clover pattern. If you click on that, you can click on individual pages, and there's a rotate option. So I just wanted to let folks know that that's there. It takes a little time to change each page and a little playing.
Yay, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you.
And then my comment about being able to see this for the public, I know, like, for example, we have Joanne Krulotz here from WRCO. I just want to make sure that other folks can review some of these documents. And I think you and I talked about this maybe a few days ago. These will be put on the website for next Tuesday's meeting. hopefully later today. Was that the idea, or is that schedule still possible?
I think we can drop, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Scott, the PDFs that we have here with the summaries and the summary reviews, can we drop those into a one PDF and put it on as one link? Is that a feasibility? I don't think that we're going to try to put out all of the worksheets that go into the general ledger. They're not that they're hidden, but there is quite a volume of them, and to really be able to understand and digest those, we'll take a look at it, but that would be a bit of an undertaking. I'm not sure if that's going to add more confusion or clarity to it. Director Scott, are we able to?
I think
Put these
so.
out?
So you're talking about all the documents are in the preliminary budget folder?
Yeah, I think we're talking about these three summaries and all the
the-
department summary
top.
sheets. Yep.
Okay, so everything is in that preliminary budget folder.
This one
Link
right
is one.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to, because I think especially the three summary sheets. I'm sorry, let me back up. The three PDFs that start with budget.
Yep.
Those I think will be especially helpful to someone wanting to dig into this from the public. And then, yes, just the summaries. I'm not talking about every spreadsheet that's graded. I think that would be hundreds of pages, and I don't know if anyone would know how to interpret those.
Sure.
Anyway, but yeah, that's in one PDF. I think that would make a lot of sense, make MIS's job easier, and then at least it's out there.
I don't know that we'll be able to accomplish it today, but by Monday for certain.
Okay, great. That was my last question. Mr. Seep?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for budgeting me a little more time. One is, you stole my thunder in terms of complimenting Mr. Langrick for excellent work here. This is the best presentation I've ever seen in terms of the budget since I've been on the county board. So I thank you for that. In terms of Melissa's comment about zero, the budget's coming forth with a zero increase. I think the key word, as Mr. Langrick says, is this is a preliminary presentation of these budgets. And I think he indicated that there is more massaging to do in terms of some of the departments. And so this is not the final word, Ms. Luck, and 0% does not necessarily mean 0% if there may be further massaging. Am I correct, Mr. Langren?
Yes, there's still many decision points to cross, again, as that gap number expands and contracts, so we can arrive at a zero balance.
Excellent job.
Thank you. And I mean, don't forget, I mean, this is also on the county board for taking steps to add more people to this effort. I mean, through acts of adding an administrator, through acts of making adjustments to have now a part-time finance officer designated on your county clerk position. These are actions of yourselves as well, to be able to put yourselves in positions to have this information to help you with the decision. So this is, make sure that you're including yourselves on all the things.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking for a motion to accept and file this preliminary budget with knowing that, go ahead.
We're just getting started.
Oh, no,
Oh,
gosh.
Yep.
Oh, I'm jumping ahead.
Yep. No. I mean, we
Keep going.
time permitted.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, the next document that you're going to see in there, Mr. Chair, is you're going to see a document that says budget 2022. It should say levy by department. And this helps. The idea then of this is it tries to break it down by departments right now on where we were at levy from last year to levy versus this year. So this is a document that we'll probably be referencing quite a bit as we reach next Tuesday, the 24th. And I think Supervisor Seepier is looking for some assistance. We'll give him just a minute. Okay, under the document here, Mr. Chair, again, you're going to see the different function. Now that, again, this is kind of you're re-breaking the pie now. So trying to make things quite match up through all the different spreadsheets is it's not quite all the same numbers because we're re-breaking the pies. This tries to break it down by department, showing 2021 levy distribution versus currently requested 2022 levy distribution, and what that plus and minus is. As you'll see, there are some outliers on there that we plan on having conversations with those department heads to understand the whys, the wheres, the hows to sort that out. At the bottom then too, the overall number for the overage, of course, doesn't quite match the same $4 million on the front. But again, this doesn't incorporate then all the different ancillary funded expenses that would fall outside of these. So, but this is a document that we'll be, again, referencing on the 24th as we try to, again, massage the numbers down into a zero balance. Is there any question on this one, Mr. Chair? It's kind of a thing to review. Okay, so then the next one, Mr. Chair, in your folder, then you're going to see the levy distribution. This one up. Levy distribution budget. This is the one then that tries to recut the pie to the different funds. So you'll see the different distributions then for the tax levy based on the different funds. This one again takes quite a bit of explaining to understand which it's in most of the fund numbers. Some of them are specific to a specific need or program. This tries to break the same number down to that, and of course this one does arrive at that same first balance sheet of the 10 million plus, but it doesn't include then bridge aids and other aids that are taken out of it. Any questions with that, Mr. Chair? Moving along then, now you're into your summary sheets. Okay, now you're into the narratives brought forward on behalf of the departments to explain these items. I'd like to commend all the hours and efforts that were put into this. Many of them are done terrifically with terrific attention. As we sorted and sifted through these, a lot of things, this being our first go at it and not everybody having an idea of what the exact expectations were, we had some really good approaches and context that kind of went into it that we're going to be able to use next year as we try. If we do the same practice again, we'll be able to kind of give good examples of how the different departments approach the different questions to try to help make it as transparent as they can. So these are the 10 question narratives, which try to, again, state what the department's doing, mandated versus non-mandated, how the guidance affected their budget, their maneuverability, things that they're requesting to add back in, and then bring into our attention long-term expenses that may be coming down the line. Any questions with those, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Comment. I did appreciate the attention to mandated versus non-mandated, because those are important considerations and differentiations that we should keep in mind as we go through the budget.
The final item that we'll have presented for use as we hit the, let's see if I can pull it up here. The final item that we'll have available, again, hopefully on Tuesday to help drive the conversation is a tracker that we're putting together. After we again get reviewed through with all the departments and understand where we're at, this will still be things we'll be adding notes to on the 24th. Will be to again build a tracker comparable to last year. I don't know if I've got this in your folder as of yet, so it's going to be displayed on your screen. It's going to track in here from the top down kind of the different impacts that we gave to departments to go above that 0% threshold. We'll then put in the gap number, which we do have as of today. We're estimating at about 500 when we started the project. We came in just under that, but we have some additional expenses that, of course, creeped up on us. And then as you'll see here on the top, we'll try to break this spreadsheet down by the order of departments that are coming in to petition on the 24th, and to try to have then the additional things of understanding that they had to cut out to meet budget and what that cost to incorporate those back in, as well as departments that may be requesting to go beyond that to expand services that are seen as needed, desired in the budget. Past that, then we'll have a section on there again for the health insurance renewal. Our preliminary budget was set on a 7% increase. The unfortunate news that came back today was our initial renewal offer is at a 16%. We knew that we kind of lowballed a little bit last year with our percentages, and unfortunately right now our medical loss ratio is coming in at about a 118, meaning that we're paying 18% over more on claims right now than premiums coming in. So we have some work to do with that. How we incorporate that into the budget is going to be another gap to fill. The section at the bottom of this worksheet then will incorporate the different options and resources that we have for potential additional fills. Again, we'll look at numbers on sales tax, interest income, the property tax, undesignated fund spending, contingency fund spending. Remember that we did allocate roughly $400,000 in change for contingency fund this year, knowing that we were going to have less money for that placement funds as well as revenue impacts. We have potential for American Rescue Plan fund spending. We're anticipating when we built this of having a discretionary fund of about 1.65 million. We just got the numbers back from Bill this morning and having us understand our total loss revenues. Our total loss revenues for the 3 years of APR is roughly estimated based on the formula is about 5.5 million, which means that our entire allotment of 3.3 million in ARP funds is essentially kind of can be used to offset lost revenues, which means that we would have a lot of discretionary funding on spending that, with the exception of we can't put it towards a pension fund, and we can't use it to do a reduction of levy.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. We can't use it for two things. What did you say?
We can't use it to put into pension fund payments or pension plans, and we can't use it to offset other taxes, other levy reduction items. We are operating underneath, again, the preliminary guidance given to zone landing and zone was to wean down off a utilization of the land grant funding, and that account we impacted heavily the last 2 years. So we're trying to come down off of that. The other two pieces that I don't think we're going to have information enough to base on a budget this year is going to be the opioid settlement and then the new infrastructure bill, which have yet to quite materialize and make it through any type of treasury guidance. And from the state yet, we still have to figure out how the state is going to manage that and for what restricted purposes we can use opioid settlement. We're working with Administrator Rislow at Pine Valley. He's indicated that approximately $504,996, did I get that right, Tom? I think is that number, is what they currently have that they're allocating into what they have as their debt serviced fund. Preliminary budget was built on the same amount of last year of 3,402 taken against that, leaving a potential for the committee of a balance of 167,000, which would take that bucket down to a zero. The other piece there is equalized tax value with consideration for net new construction, which is coming out. We're anticipating it's probably going to be comparable to last year at about a $30,000 rate. How that plays into it is yet to be determined. So when we get all those added up with our pluses and our minuses, the proposal coming forward to you on what'll be the second meeting, or I'm sorry, the first meeting in September will be my recommendation of which levers to push and pull to try to get this to zero. Then yourself, Mr. Chair, and the committee will have the opportunity then to agree or disagree and give guidance then on how to maneuver that to adjust that as you see fit. Any questions with this, Mr. Chair?
Okay, let's see if we have questions. Mr. Seep, I'm going to make you go last this time. Let's see if other people have questions or comments. Okay, you get to go. Go ahead. Mr. Seep, go ahead.
Yes, I got the impression from your presentation that from what you observed in this process that there's room for closing that gap significantly.
We do. We have some options through fund balance right now that we're anticipating that we can utilize. Other things when we talk about utilizing contingent funds is an understanding that, an awareness that we're in a situation where our infrastructure, our buildings, our heating and cooling systems, different systems that we have to keep our all of our materials running are quite aging, and part of our contingent funds and those types of things we have is kind of our insurance policy to kind of help us with those things, as we, in my opinion, are not yet at a place where we're actively putting together solid plans to do different replacements with our infrastructure. So we do have maneuverability to use those types of funds to close operational gaps, but they do come to us at a cost and a risk of then potentially being short when things were to unexpectedly break. But I feel that it's still not going to be easy because we still have to incorporate health insurance. We still have yet to firm up the list of all the things and an understanding of what departments are currently cutting out, of which a lot of those departments are say desperate, but are very much of thinking is a good idea to reinsert those additional expenditures back in to provide a service to bring it back to at least the existing level. So there's, even though the gap right now says $400,000 and change, that doesn't really fully bring into appreciation all the things that have been taken out of services to reach that. I stated that
Mr.
correctly.
Chairman,
Go ahead, Supervisor
Mr.
Brewer.
Langrick, what is the difference between our 7% planned and then the actual 16% charge for health insurance? How many tens of thousands does that amount to?
I don't have that calculated at the moment. We got the 16%. I got it about 11 o'clock, so I didn't have time to quite maneuver on that, but I plan on having that Tuesday at our September meeting at the very latest.
If we had the dollar amount for the 7%, you could double it and add 1%.
Which I think is out there. I mean, the other parts that come into that, though, is conversations with health insurance and with departments, and understanding too that there's a possibility to bring that down with different plan design changes to help do that. It's things you don't want to talk about, but whether it's an increase in a premium, an increase in a deductible, changing the medications, there are things that can be maneuvered on to lessen that. Could be shifting it on to the employee as a whole through premiums, or shifting it on to those that are higher use of things if you're going to do different tiered medications and different plan designs like that.
May I just say that I think health insurance is an area that is very sensitive in terms of the burden, even the current burden on employees. And I think we have to be cognizant of that in terms of whether or not we pass on those increased costs to them, or we figure out another way to manage it.
Say there's two parts to that. The first one is yes, the goal of this year that we took action on earlier in this year was to address compensations, and we're going to be doing that with a roughly 7% increase for general wage schedules to try to match that. I think my plan and my recommendation going to this body next year is going to be, now that we've addressed compensations, let's take a look at health insurance next year. But again, knowing that that is going to be another budget impact in which we would have to fit it onto the plate, so other things have to come off.
It's uncomfortable to be in a position of one who is giving on the one hand and then taking away on the other hand.
Concur.
Okay, Mr. Langrick, do you have any additional items you want to present?
I do. I'm almost done. Thank you for staying awake, Mr. Chair. We are on, so just to review then on where we're at, August 24th, the administrator and finance and personnel will be meeting with the departments and representatives as scheduled. The schedule is below. A reminder to the committee that we're going to be having that over at Health and Human Services. They'll be hosting us over there. Building policy over there is mask mandate. We'll be in masks over there. We will have food provided. There is no food break. You'll have to talk with the chair to see if bathroom breaks will be allowed. The intentions of these meetings will be to evaluate, prioritize, and develop a solution to fill the primary gaps as we kind of talked about. The breakdown of the departments are there. There is currently one deviation to that. Attorney Harper, district attorney, has court hearing, and I believe it's out of county, so she's not going to be able to be available to present. Requesting that we probably, at the end of this meeting, if we can designate one of our alternative dates, and maybe if we can try to set that up as a WebEx type of a format to accommodate for District Attorney Harper, as well as in the event that we are unable to meet all the other departments on that day, is probably in our best interest. With that, again, Mr. Chair, I'll be looking then for a motion to accept and file the preliminary budget, to continue efforts to develop options with the departments, have the administrator present a recommendation on September 7th. Mr. Chair.
Okay, would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Brewer,
I'll second.
second by Luck. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Well done.
All right, that motion carries. Once again, Mr. Langrick. This takes us to agenda item number 10, 2022 short-term borrowing. Mr. Langrick?
Second, Mr. Chair, I'll pull it up here so we're all make sure we're looking at the same stuff. Looking today for a motion, two different motions, unless you want to wrap it into the one. Motion to pursue short-term loan financing not to exceed $1,050,000 as part of the 2022 Richland County budget capital improvement plan, and to recommend an should be authorization resolution to the county board for consideration at their September 21st meeting. The second motion looking today is for motion to recommend resolution to the county board to enter into an agreement with Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals, that is Carol Worth's business, in the amount of $10,000 to provide necessary loan services. Again, the fees for Carol, that $10,000 would come out of the $1,050,000. Background on this item is Carol Worth, Richland County Municipal Advisor, has an updated report and will furnish proposed resolution to the Richland County regarding short-term loan financing. Please find the attached report recommending short-term loan financing be used to purchase, outlay, and reoccurring capital improvements. This funding method allows the county to increase debt levy to continue capital improvements and preserves operating levy to avoid further reduction of services. The authorization or authority resolution requires a 3/4 vote of seated county board members elected, which means that 16 plus yes votes are needed regardless of the number of supervisors present that night. This is kind of the same road we walked on last year. The report is put in there. It looks comparable to last year. Pull it up here. While you're eyeing through this, I will make the thing to keep in mind for this plan, our short-term loan financing plan, is I had discussion with Carol Worth, with Director Scott, with Sheriff Porter on, I believe it was Tuesday. Discussion was on the upcoming tower project, and if that were to go through, that project could be anywhere from a range of $5 million to $8 million is the current projection. We don't know that for sure. We're making decisions here through finance and personnel into the county board to simply decide on what type of coverage is appropriate for Richland County. If we were to materialize at a number like that, we'd be looking to do another bonding. As we're aware of, we are within limits, but we're approaching about our halfway mark for our legal bonding that we can do. If we were to go into bonding for the radio tower project, it would be my recommendation to consider then stepping down from our short-term loan financing to free up annual monies to go towards that new tower bonding without increasing the total dollar amount to our debt levy service for taxpayers. So essentially, we're keeping the same debt levy amount and a dollar amount, but rather than doing the short-term loan, that's all going now towards a 15-year bonding project for radio tower. What that means, of course, then to the impact then is for the projects that we're visualizing through our short-term loan financing is that has to be reincorporated back into our operational levy. It's my projection. Now you do have capacity up where we could legally and add a future radio tower project onto that, raise the debt levy tax to it, but as was kind of pointed out to us in the last green book that came out, currently Richland County does have the highest property tax millage per county as a county entity. So that's a different conversation. We're not here to talk about radio towers specifically, but I wanted to bring that to your attention in context of future short-term financing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I just want to make one clarification that according to the Green Book, Richland County does not have the highest property tax levy per capita in the state. We have the highest debt levy per
Yes.
capita in the state.
Correct, yes.
So our
Thank you.
property taxes are somewhere more in the middle of the road, middle of the 72 counties, but our debt per
Thank you.
capita is I've heard number one again. So just want to make sure we know that's clear. And also I do want to, it does get a little fuzzy here, but we don't have on the agenda a radio tower project that may affect this, but we probably shouldn't get too into detail about the radio tower project. And the other last thing I want to mention is we did 1.05 million in short-term borrowing last year. So if our operating levy was at, say, that ends up being 0%, we don't know that yet. And then we kept this short-term borrowing and we didn't do any additional borrowing. That would mean that there'd be no increase to people's taxes. Whereas last year there was a big increase because we added this 1.05 million for the first time. So if we just kept it flat, if we continue to borrow this money, it's not an additional amount added on to what we already did last year. So comments or questions, Mr. Seat?
Yes, those county board members who are not on the Finance and Personnel Committee and so probably are not up to speed with all these details, as well as people who are paying attention in the general public. You hear this conversation, well, why are they borrowing money year after year? So I think it's important to answer the question in a very clear way. The question would be, why are we borrowing this money? And what's the process involved in this? And what's the purpose of borrowing this money successively year to year? Not for us, but for the county board members, some of whom are skeptical, and for the general public. There are a few folks out there, some of them are town chairmen, and some of them are other influential people who can make a lot of politics out of it because of a misunderstanding. So I think we should make a very clear statement to the county board, and the public in general through the county board, why we are doing this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, anyone else? Yep, go ahead, Mr. Turk.
We've appropriately lauded Administrator Langrick and our financial staff and all the department heads and everybody involved for getting us such a clear picture. I think the continued burden is on us, as Mr. Sepa suggested, to be sure we're broadcasting that picture, to be sure we're sharing that clear picture, not just about debt service, but about everything involved as we struggle to maintain the level of services to the citizens of our county with ever-changing budget challenges. So I in essence, am agreeing with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Seat, but also want to just reinforce that as great a job as we're doing internally, we need to make sure that that information is highlighted and explained externally as well.
Mr. Turk, you're cutting in and out on us, unfortunately. Just
I apologize. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Dave, and I'm online, but I think they might be having problems on their end.
Ah, okay.
okay. Thank you for those comments. I'm sorry we couldn't. Oh no.
Yeah, I think it's on your end, you guys. We can hear each other fine, but we can't hear, you guys can't hear us.
Okay. Now I think we're back. So, Mr. Turk, do you mind just repeating maybe the last 20 seconds of what you said, if you can make an estimate?
Sure. I was just in essence agreeing with the majority of what Supervisor Seep said, but wanting to make sure that as clear a picture as we're getting internally, we're sharing that as much as possible externally with other board members, with citizens, with everybody involved, so that taxpayers have a very clear picture of the challenges we're facing, not just with debt service, but with all the things we're needing to do to try to balance our budget and deliver services folks expect.
I think they might be gone again. I heard you clearly. It sounded good.
Well, thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, can you hear us now?
You see Clay put in the chat, he thinks he lost.
Maybe we could take a 5-minute recess and then come back.
Thank you for making the effort to get me heard. I was agreeing in essence with Supervisor Seif about how we need to communicate this, but I think it's essential that we communicate it not just to other supervisors, but to taxpayers, and not just about debt service, but about all the different challenges we're facing trying to come up with a balanced budget that still delivers the services that folks are expecting. And health insurance is part of that, and wage increase and being able to remain competitive to have good employees is part of that. Certainly the levy restrictions that we face every year are a huge part of that.
Mr. Turk, this time we heard you, so thank you for that. I hope that the internet connectivity is back up. For Supervisor Luck, I see you moving around every once in a while, so thanks for having your video on. That kind of gives me an indication of whether or not we're connected still. So we did, I think it was a couple of months ago, this committee adopted a list of projects that would be funded by this $1.05 million borrowing. And the greatest percentage of that money would go toward the highway department. I think it was something like $300,000 for highway projects and $350,000 for a new sand salt shed. So okay, were you guys hearing what I was just saying? Okay, great. So I think that's part of the communication about the borrowing, but I agree with what Mr. Turk is saying as well. We have all sorts of challenges across the operation, and so improving our communication with the public about all of that, I agree with all of that. Okay, so we have a motion before us to pursue this short-term to the county board at its September 21st meeting, as well as a motion to recommend that we enter into an agreement with Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals in the amount of $10,000. So I'm looking for a motion to accomplish both of those things.
I'll make that motion.
I'll move.
Okay, we got a motion by Brewer and we'll do a second by Luck. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Melissa, are you in favor of it? That's okay. I'm in favor also. Mr. Seep stepped out of the room to go to the bathroom, so that's why I'm asking for everyone's opinion on this. So that motion does carry. That takes us to agenda item number 11, 2022 Capital Improvement Plan. Mr. Langred.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to accept capital improvement, capital projects policy plan, either as presented or with amendments, and to utilize in preparation of short-term borrowing and to incorporate into the 2022 budget. Background on this item is the items listed were arrived at through amendments to the county administrator's proposal list on 21 May 2021. The finalized list will be incorporated in the 2022 budget and will be used to set resolution language in the authorization resolution that will be voted on in the September 21st Richland County Board meeting. Again, I need 16 votes on that one, so we need everybody to be there and 16 in favor to make it pass. The list here is where we had arrived at. The last major changes on it was we did reduce the squad cars and then brought up the jail camera system. We're arriving at roughly a $1,040,000 amount right there. And this then covers the anticipated amounts then that we're expecting with monies that would go out to pay for service fees to incorporate the debt and then to have it for these identified projects, the MIS projects that you see on the top, the 2 jail projects of the squads, the jail camera, and then the salt shed of $300,000 in the county trunk road improvements with short-term borrowing of $350,000. There may be additional maneuvering billings for road improvements that are options to you, as we'll get to with ARP funds, and then we're still waiting to see what infrastructure looks like, if that's going to be parceled out to county trunks. We're still not sure, but in order to make sure that we have funds available to keep up our infrastructure on county trunk roads, to keep our GTA funds in, this is where we arrived at, Mr. Chair.
So we're looking for a motion to accept this capital improvement and capital projects policy.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
is Sheriff Porter on the line yet? Maybe not, but Melissa is.
I am here.
I just want to make, okay, the reduction in squad cars, I don't want to see us get in the bind that we were in a few years back, and it hasn't been that long, where we were basically driving junk. And was a safety hazard not only to our deputies, but the general public, I think. So tell me that we're in good shape if we go with 2 rather than 3.
I do have some concerns about going with 2. I don't think it's dire, but it's not going to be very often where we can only get 2 cars. It'll be like projecting, I would say that maybe we could swallow that once every 5 years.
Okay, any other questions? I'm still looking for a motion to accept this policy.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Brewer, a second by Turk. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well, so that motion does carry. On to agenda item number 12, American Rescue Plan. Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion. Actually, Mr. Chair, do you mind if we take a 5-minute recess? I'd like to check and make sure Supervisor Seep is okay.
Yep, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess. We'll be back. We're just going to check on Mr. Seep. Come back out of our recess. So we picking up where we left off. We were at agenda item number 12, American Rescue Plan. Well, I'm sorry. What was that? Oh, let's see. Dave and Melissa, can you guys get back on WebEx for sound?
I'll hang up from this call and try it. Sure.
Okay.
I think it's working. Seems to be.
Yeah, I
Can
think.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. So we're all back on WebEx now, so we can carry on.
Yay, technology.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking today under American Rescue Plan, looking for a motion to accept a preliminary portions of the American Rescue Plan by the decided percentages of expenditure per category. And you'll see kind of the breakdown here. We'll kind of talk through the language, and then I'll show you the spreadsheet that you were provided in the materials to try to help further explain it. So looking for as part of the motion, a 10% appropriation for support public health response efforts to decrease the spread. And let me back up a second. These different categories here that you'll see the percentages by, these are some of the criterias that were designed through the federal legislation of what the purposes of the bill were for, now act. Support public health response efforts to decrease the spread is the first one. Recommendation today is a 10% allocation towards that. Response to negative economic impacts, assistance to households, small business, and nonprofits and aid impact industries, 5%. Premium pay for eligible essential workers, 10%. Water, sewer, broadband infrastructure investment, 25%. Replacement public sector revenue losses. This is kind of like we had talked about a little bit earlier. This is provisions of government services, the language being to continue to provide valuable services. With our lost revenues, we're kind of seeing this as discretionary spending with the exception of not using it towards pension funds or towards levy reduction. This whole motion then is with an understanding that further decisions will be needed on specifying projects within the categories. Second motion then is motion to develop competitive grant application, selection, awarding, and reporting process for awarding funds in support of a local early childhood education project or projects. We cross that bridge. Background on this item, this is comparable to a report that was given back in April, I believe. It states the purpose of the coronavirus state local fiscal recovery funds, different funding objectives, the general funding uses, and then it has a reference on here to the Department of Treasury with their final interim guidance rule. And a reminder that total apportionment is $3,350,999. Half of that was received in May of 2021. The other half is anticipated from May of 2022. Notes on the attachment before we switch to that slide. It would be appropriate to develop a competitive grant application, selection, awarding, and reporting process for awarding funds in support of a local early childhood education project if we go that route. The second note is that you'll see at the bottom of the matrix, it'll indicate the current proposals, apportionments per categories, a dollar value per category, a total committed per category, which we'll walk through. It's important to note that our proposed items far exceed the total funding. So there is decision points on here yet on what we're going to use it for in the conversations. Let me then.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seep, if you don't mind, let's just let Mr. Langrick finish and then
Oh,
we
I
can
thought
open
he
it.
was through. Sorry, thought you were through.
Not a problem. Okay, so the spreadsheet that was included into it is rather extensive. So when I pull it on here, it's going to look mighty small. I'm hoping that you're able to pull it up on your devices. For you folks viewing at home, I apologize for the small font that you're going to be submitted to. But the spreadsheet is broken down from left to right with the organization of the department, the project request, the purpose of the request, the colorful Roy G. Biv columns there are the different categories that we just talked about, then with the proposed or in some cases already committed dollars per those two projects. Working our way from left to right or top to bottom, you'll see a petition on there. And I'm sorry, the final column then kind of tracks on if it's a request, essentially the status of that item. If it's an option that's just, hey, we can kind of do this, it's listed as an option. If it is a request for consideration, a little bit more direct, it is listed as a request. You'll see underneath line 8, like a Tri-County airport, we have committed, where essentially we've kind of walked down the path of being committed to designating those funds. And like a line number 6 for the Laval telecom, we've already have a resolution establishing the use of those funds. So rather than kind of reading through all of them, let me just give you a minute to kind of reflect on those. And then I'll point out again at the bottom left, it has our total ARP disbursement. Again, that amount of 3.35 or 3.351. The lost revenue calculation was a number we received at 12 o'clock today. Again, working with Bill from our auditing. Using a formula from Forward Analytics, the amount that we can apportion towards lost revenue is in fact the entire amount. Forward Analytics suggested through their calculations and estimates that each county would at least be able to have half of the total apportionments through the formula given to be used towards, I don't want to say quite non-discretionary fund, but for county services outside of those criterias. We were anticipating at least 1.65. The formula came out to anticipating about $5.5 million of lost revenues over the course through 2024, 2025 is the formula. So be completely transparent. The county has access to 3.35 of being able to use it in a purple column. So, but again, underneath the context and the purpose, the point that the federal government, Congress, Senate, and the President passed this bill, the proposal I have before you today is a 10% apportionment for the first category, 5%, 10%, 25%, and a reservation of 50% towards a more discretionary type spending for other expenses outside of that. So I will turn it over to yourself, Mr. Chair. If there's questions or further comments that you want to make on the current listed items, please do so.
Okay, are there questions?
Are you
Mr. Bre-
asking,
I have
Mr.
a
Brewer?
question.
Yep, go ahead.
Looking at the 10% support the public health response, et cetera, the breakdown. Agenda item cover. Notice our plan seems to be real heavy in public sector revenue loss, which I'm glad. But I don't see anything in it response to negative impacts on households, small businesses, and nonprofits. Can you
Yes.
educate me on that?
On the column for that category for the economic impacts, you'll see on the tracker there we have two different items right now. We have item in line 3 and line 4. The first one for economic development, options for affordable housing is considered. There's options regarding economic assistance to workers, families, farms, possibly, etc. This is very expansive. You've got a spectrum of things that this can go towards. When we looked at housing as one of our initiatives at a city level, at a county level, has been to address our concerns with housing. The supplemental language kind of said that it fits into like an LMI assessment type of a formula that we would have to incorporate, which would kind of match like with a CDBG, which seemed to get very confusing very fast. So that is still an option that we can take a look at. It just would require a lot of administrative maneuver to try to make it work. And kind of like our CDBG funds, we could be appropriating a lot of money towards consultants to help figure it out, which is less monies that go into direct impacts on either services or towards the community. The second one on there is, you'll see under community under line 4 is support local early childhood education. And this one directly is stated in the guidance from the Treasury. We do have a petition brought forward from one nonprofit organization that's trying to look for a gap closing to bring their early childhood education center, and I think after before work hours daycare operation online, there came forward with a petition of $150,000. In order to do this, though, and for the county to award it to a single nonprofit entity, it was discussed, and I'm recommending that if we go down that route, that we would want to establish that, yes, we want to do this towards a local early childhood education effort, and to put some type of almost like a grant application process in place, distribute that out so that folks that are also considering this initiative have a fair notification that there's a possibility out there for that, and to have a competitive type of a response back to be able to evaluate to best apportion those funds. Did that answer your question, Supervisor?
Yes, it does, but I guess I'm disappointed that we couldn't have directly helped some of our small ailing businesses and that took a hit during the pandemic. But I am aware that a lot of that help is coming back around now through direct grant funding, through various government agencies. And I realize this whole thing happened very quickly. The rescue plan funds were kind of thrown out there with pretty vague and not real clear-cut concise rules on how it was to be spent. I know that. there was a lot of speculation, a lot of head scratching. I think we've done a wonderful job here in allocating these monies and the potential for spending them. But I was a little disappointed that we couldn't help some of our businesses directly.
Mr. Seep?
Yes, I think you're entertaining a motion to accept this document. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
It's a report that not to approve, but to accept.
Looking for a motion to accept the preliminary apportionments of the American Rescue Plan with decided percentages of the expenditures, with an understanding that further decisions will be needed to specify projects within the category. So it's looking for a commitment to essentially these amounts for the different categories today. As you notice, and if I can bring it to your attention, just in case, if you're looking over at the brilliant fuchsia type color there, the purple column, that kind of shows our different, I want to say quite discretionary spending, but lost revenue type of expenditures. Right now that column totals out to roughly 3.9 million or almost $4 million. We obviously don't have that much that we're going to be apportioned towards this. Again, the different mindsets here is we have our more proprietary type of operations with Pine Valley, with the fair, UW Food Services, Simon Center. They had experienced lost revenues from the COVID pandemic, so this would be kind of trying to put future flux into that to make up for those losses. The UW campus, we have deferred maintenances on our 10-year plan, which we're 2 years in. The appropriateness of influxing $1 million to keep up with those buildings is an option to you. The one that I had put on here from my behalf of myself is a seed and separate for non-mandated services. This would be seen as a program to take some of our non-mandated services to get them in a position for success and separate them out from underneath the county. The radio tower project, which we previously mentioned, it could come in, and again, this is all speculative, at a 5 to 8 million type of a range. Using money against that, of course, reduces that overall borrowing that we would have to do, and thereby frees up future opportunities. And then a consideration for highway road infrastructure. As we talked about, if we go down the road of a radio tower, it's going to cut into our short-term balance, our short-term fundings, if we want to stay underneath that short-term levy amount and impact to the taxpayers. So with knowing then that we're going to have a reduction in that for the next few years, this helps put money towards our highway infrastructure as we also then to try to take on a radio tower project. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept this proposal as presented, and I make that motion as it was stated by Mr. Langrick, and ask for discussion after second.
Okay, we've got a motion to accept the preliminary
Second.
appropriations, and we've got a second. Motion by Seep, second by Brewer. One thing I would like to say about these percentages is I'd like the percentages overall. I think kind of along Supervisor Brewer's line of thinking, though, I think I would prefer that 5% for the second category of response to negative economic impacts, assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries. I think I'd prefer that was more like 10%, and perhaps the water, sewer, broadband, infrastructure investments, perhaps that's the one that could decrease to 20%. And then maybe there'd be a way to either deliver some of these funds to small businesses and or I know childcare there's a big lack of it in Richland County. And even if 2 childcare centers opened, I doubt that would fill. I don't even know if that would fulfill all the need there is out there right now. So I think between those 2 reasons, that's why I'd like to see that percentage increased.
Chair?
Yep, Mr. Seep.
Yes, thank you. Made that motion with I think I gained the understanding from your presentation that there is a degree of discretion and fluidity and the allocation of these funds following guidance that you perceive from federal agency. Is that correct?
There is. We are obligated to do our initial report at the end of the month at 8/31, kind of stating out to the extent that we're talking about here today that we have found a need or a service that we're going to be applying these towards. We don't have to have it committed to specifically, but they're looking at a federal level of ensuring that municipalities and counties have a need for this. So we're looking to find the earmark amounts to kind of place them by category.
Just a comment, I know that the federal government's throwing around trillions of dollars right now, and I understand how they're going to fund it. We're going to reduce military spending, obviously. But anyway, there's a federal infrastructure bill hurtling down pike, so I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of help for us and state and local government through that. I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch, but I'm thinking there will be help coming down.
Okay, well, I think hearing Mr. Sheep's comments, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to amend that 5% figure under the second category be increased to 10% and the 25% figure under the fourth category be reduced to 20%.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Luck. Discussion on the motion to amend.
Discussion, yes. Do we have the authority to change that allocation?
Well, yes, it's plan going forward is still going to be something that's kind of adopted on by the entire county with you, as you folks as kind of the representation from the county board on how we're spending funds. I don't know necessarily if it's a county asset. It's not an administrator asset, if that's the question. So,
all right. So, motion has been made and seconded, but I have another question, if I may discuss it, Mr. Chairman.
Is it on the motion to amend?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Would you clearly state that your motion to amend?
Yep, my motion to amend is to increase the second category from 5% to 10%, and the second category is response to negative economic impacts, which is assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, and aid to impacted industries. And then it's to reduce the fourth category from 25% to 20%, and that category is water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure investments. Okay, any more discussion on this motion to amend? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I'm in favor, but I haven't heard from Mr. Turk or Mr. Seep, so.
I vote no because at this point, I may support this at a later time, but I don't think I know enough details in terms of the consequences of your motion. So I have to vote no, President. It doesn't mean, Mr. Chair, and I think Mr. Langrick would support this statement, that since this is only accepting the report, that the guidance is
Mr. Seep, I have to just interrupt
validity.
you. This is not a report. This is, we're accepting preliminary appropriations.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I have to vote no.
Okay, Mr. Turk?
I'm voting no at this time as well.
Okay, so the motion carries. I'm sorry, the motion to amend carries. So now we have an amended motion to accept the preliminary appropriations of the American Rescue Plan by the decided percentages of expenditures per category. So it'd be 10% for the first category, 10% for the second, 10% for the third, 20% for the fourth, and 50% for the fifth. Was there discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So then we have another motion here recommended to us today to develop a competitive grant application selection, awarding, and reporting process for awarding funds in support of a local early childhood education project or projects. So would anyone like to make that motion?
Well, if no one else will, I certainly will make the motion.
Okay, motion by Seat,
I'll second.
second by Luck. So discussion on this motion.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yep,
ask,
go ahead.
do we have a project in mind?
There's been a petition that's come forward from a project that's starting in a Rock Ridge through Pastor Dan Ludwig.
Ludwig,
He approached asking for some gap fill to get his operation going. With that in mind, then there might be other opportunities. We had heard from Assistant Provost Mike Compton that they were also trying to start up child support types of efforts right at our own campus here in town. So with that being said, and this being a specified function that it can be used for, it'd be appropriate then to kind of do a competitive bidding to make sure that we have a full understanding of what the programs are, the feasibilities, understand their business plans, and ensuring that we have a return on investment in to the extent that the services are going to be delivered to the community. This motion also does kind of cue in, though, for this category that we're looking to appropriate those funds towards child care, early childhood development.
Thank you. I did a quick tour of the Rockbridge facility the other day. They're on the right track.
One question I have is, I know that when we allocated the $200,000 for that potential Laval broadband project, I know Supervisor Severson was saying, well, what if someone else comes up with another broadband project? You know, do we have to say yes to everyone who initially approaches for broadband? So my question here is, do you think, Mr. Langrick, we need to develop something similar for broadband, or did you leave that out on purpose, kind of thinking we should really just focus on the early childhood education part?
The current plan, and I apologize here, let me see if I can pull it back up. 1 second here, Mr. Chair. So the current plan, kind of as drafted, underneath water, sewer, broadband, the current project allocations for that is the $200,000 for the Cazenovia project, or the Laval Telecom project. Underneath that column, then, currently is also drainage improvements for the airport project, the Tri-County Airport project, which is a stormwater removal, seen as a health type of a thing. Then we have in here as an option, a current proposed option is roughly $500,000 to connect fiber to our own county buildings from the general or the courthouse out to Highway, to Pine Valley, connecting at Fair along the way out to Simons. Estimate with Laval is running through municipality. It's about 12.5 feet a foot to run conduit fiber. That came out to an estimate roughly of $500,000 to run that project. It is a very hefty on the front end investment to run our own fiber to these buildings, but then for hopefully the existence of the buildings and the campuses, then we're not obligated to pay for fiber use to be able to get to these to run our different networks. So that money isn't designated in any type of a project. It could be reappropriated towards another fiber optic community impact or outside of an organizational impact, but that's kind of a placeholder that's seen as an option right now. That answer your question, Mr. Chair?
In a roundabout way, yes, I think.
I mean, yes, I guess coming directly, if it wants to be reappropriated and we want to put more into community fiber, then I would say yes, we would want to have then a comparable, what projects are out there and how do we do that. The other thing that would make that a challenge is their grant windows come up usually pretty quick. When they finally decide on it, they need an answer now, and in different parts of the county. So, but it's possible, feasible, and if that's a use that we want to use it for, then that is something we can accommodate.
And I think your answer that they have grant windows that probably come from the state, I'm assuming, and we can't necessarily put out our own RFP when the state has their own grant application process. So that answers my question. Any other questions, comments on this motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So thank you for bringing all this forward. This is a lot of work, I know, on top of all your other budget stuff that you're working on, so much appreciated. Agenda item number 13, Pine Valley RN Manager Starting Wage, and this is an amendment to amended resolution 19-135 that's proposed to us today.
Mr. Chair, looking to recommend a motion to pass Resolution 1935 as amended with the language and send it to County Board for approval. Background on this is Resolution 1935 changes that had the top wage step for Pine Valley RN Manager position from step 5 to 8, but it was silent regarding the starting step that should have been changed as well. Recently, a new RN manager started at Pine Valley. And since Resolution 135 was silent regarding the starting step, one could point that the county's recently passed policy on personnel classification, compensation, and staff authorization, section 4B, would state that scheduled placement and progression on page 7, Pine Valley, I would say that the starting step should be on step 3. However, the attached amended Resolution 1935 puts the language that clarifies Pine Valley's original intent, which is essentially to still work within a 3-step gap, but to slide the whole scale up. So at this time, Resolution 1935's passing was to have a starting step for the manager at step 6. With this intentions in mind, I gave authorization to Administrator Rislow to move forward with recruitment for that position at a step 6, pending that there's passage of this through the county board. In the event that it is not, the position would defer back down to the language that we do have in place with no penalty impact on the current employee. I would defer to Administrator Rislow for any questions on this, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so looking for a motion to amend Resolution 19-35 according to the attachment.
Make the motion.
A motion by Brewer,
I will second since I'm on that board.
second by Seat. Any discussion on this one or questions for Mr. Rislow? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Yep, thank you, Mr. Rislow, for coming today. Agenda item number 14, amend resolution regarding animal species judging to include all fair eligible animals.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve an amendment to resolution number 1695 to include all animal species judged at the Richland County Fair and approve the schedule of fair events. And included in this proposed amendment resolution would be approve the day for the dog judge that handled our show on Saturday, August 6, 2021, which is an event that has already happened. It was found that all animals weren't included in the resolution 1695 when the fair office was compiling the materials needed for the show. To kind of point it out, an example was cats, dogs, hamsters, llamas, lizards was not added into that language. It says all species, but then goes on to list cows, sheep, pigs, those types of things. So we want to be clear that all of these animals which are eligible to register for the county fair, that those judges are paid underneath the initial attentions of that resolution. Mr. Chair.
It's not every day we get to make a motion to amend a resolution to include cats, dogs, hamsters, llamas, and lizards. So does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion and we'll comment then that all animals are equal.
Yes, I was going to say, this is
Okay.
a equal rights amendment
Especially
for
pigs.
animals.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Brewer, second by Luck. I really agree on the pigs one. I think they really get drug in the mud. And I think that's very unfair. Okay. Any discussion? Besides that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No one's opposed to that. All right, that motion carries. That takes us to agenda item number 15, which is closed session for Wisconsin statute 19.851BB, considering dismissal, demotion, licensing, or discipline of any public employee or person licensed by a board or commission, or the investigation of charges against such person, or considering the grant or denial of tenure for a university faculty member and the taking of formal action on any such matter, provided that the faculty member or other public employee or person licensed is given actual notice of any evidentiary hearing which may be held prior to final action being taken, and of any meeting at which final action may be taken. And this is for notification of termination of employee on probation at the Sheriff's Department.
Mr. Chair, for the purpose of recording, can Tammy stay as a recorder?
Is Tammy taking minutes?
Tammy is taking minutes for us. She is a deputy of an elected official. I'm comfortable with her staying, provided that you are, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I am as well, as long as she's taking minutes. And Mr. Turk and Supervisor Luck, we're gonna call you. I'm gonna hand your cell phone numbers to Mr. Cooley here. Pull them up. So you guys can go ahead and lead the WebEx meeting and we'll call you. Or you can mute and shut off your cameras. I'm gonna wait till they get.
Is the door closed?
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we record in the minutes the acceptance of the notification from the sheriff.
Okay, motion by Seat,
I'll second.
second by Brewer. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 18, future agenda items. Don't have any paper and we're not recording anymore, so I might need someone to hand me paper. Oh, you are recording. Okay, great. Okay, so Mr. Brewer, do you have any future agenda items?
I do not.
Okay, Mr. Seat?
I think the future agenda is going to be pretty busy. I don't want to crowd it.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Turk? Supervisor Luck? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 19 is adjournment. So I believe Mr. Langrek wants us to come up with a backup dates in case we can't get everything done at our next meeting of August 24th. So if folks could pull out their calendar, and shall we start with August 25th, which is Wednesday, to see if people have availability and to see if we have a room available, I suppose, too, might be an issue. Yeah, I think we would need in-person and WebEx available for a backup date. And yeah, Supervisor Luck, what were you saying? Okay, so she can do the 25th, but not the 26th. What about the 25th for other folks?
It's bad for me.
Is all day bad for you? Okay. And Supervisor Luck, is all day bad for you on the 26th? Yeah. Okay. What about you, Supervisor Seat?
Mr. Chairman, I may have to go virtual because I do have a medical appointment that day in Madison
Which day do you have a medical appointment?
on the second day of the 26th.
The 26th, you have a medical appointment. Okay. And then Supervisor Turk, what about you? And what about the 26th? Okay. So I think I'm hearing from two people that the 26th is not good for them. That was Supervisor Seat and Supervisor Luck. So I think the 25th, Supervisor Brewer, you're going to have a tough time making it that day, but I think that's going to work for more people. So I think the 25th.
I don't think Mr. Turk was available on the 20th.
Neither date, but he's not available on the 26th either. So that's why I'm thinking the 25th, we could get more people.
But we're talking about a virtual presentation from the district attorney. It shouldn't take very long.
And it's just a backup. Oh, and is it for perhaps other departments if we need? Okay. Maybe we should do that. Yeah, that might be a little bit more fair. Okay, so we are not going to set a backup date today. We'll have that handled through a doodle poll. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, August 24th at 8 a.m. in the HHS conference room and via WebEx. So that's the motion I'm looking for right now. Okay, motion by Turk and a second by Luck. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, sir.